All right, everybody, welcome back into Cherry Picking. Today's video weekend preview for Week 6 of the fantasy hockey season, presented by FanDuel Canada, North America's #1 sportsbook. The NHL this weekend going across the pond, not North America, actually in Sweden for the Global Series. Game started on Thursday. As I record this, there's a game in about 4 hours at 2 o'clock with the Leafs and the Red Wings, and then 2 more on the weekend. We get hockey at 11 a.m. on Saturday and hockey at 8 a.m. on Sunday. So I've got the weekend preview for you guys, about 8 games I'm going to be going through, including the 2 games on Sunday morning and Saturday morning in Sweden. Some starts, not a ton of sits. I think there's going to be a decent amount of overs today in the NHL slate this weekend, and definitely a lot of spots to kind of target for some players. Definitely got some streamers for you guys, and then best bets. So be sure to download that FanDuel Canada app before we get into the preview, so you guys are locking in bets. All right, so the first game of the weekend on Saturday, Minnesota Wild taking on the Ottawa Senators in Sweden at Avicii Arena. It's at 11 a.m. Eastern time, so a nice early game there before college football even starts to that 1 hour, mitigate that time there if you need some sports to watch. But the Wild obviously been struggling recently, not the same team defensively that we've seen. Obviously, they've missed out on Jared Spurgeon. He's finally back in the lineup as well. Their last 5 games played, 2-3 record. Their shot attempt share, not that bad, 10th in the NHL in Corsi for percentage and 5-on-5 over the last 5 games played. Third fewest shots on goal is one thing that they need to definitely shore up. But the one thing that kind of surprised me here, first in shots on goal allowed in 5-on-5 play over the last 5 games, allowing just 24 per game. So that just goes back to their goaltending. Philip Gustafsson obviously been a huge disappointment so far to start the year. And then Marc-Andre Fleury's been good, or was good, and then obviously in their last couple games has been a little bit more shaky. So some better goaltending will certainly help this Wild team, but I think it's also on the defensive unit to kind of start mitigating these chances, and especially even on the offense to kind of alleviate some pressure off their goalies and find the back of the net a little bit more often. If you're looking at the Sens right now, the Sens are allowing the second most goals per game in 5-on-5 play over the last 5 games. If you watch that game on Thursday, they're up 4-0, allowed Detroit to get right back into it, ended up winning 5-4 in overtime on an insane goal from Tim Stützle. But looking at some starts and sits for this one, so definitely on the Minnesota Wild thing, you could side of things, you could start pretty much everyone on those top 2 lines. Marco Rossi's been a little bit more of a disappointment recently on that top line. After he first started on there, he started that Rangers game where they came back and won. He was awesome, but since then he has been a little bit more of a disappointment. Joel Eriksson continues to be this guy on this Wild team that contributes in all facets of the game: penalty kill, power play, you name it. The guy is contributing. 3 goals his last 5 games played. And then Matt Zuccarello as well has been awesome for this Wild team. 6 points his last 5 games played. Looking at defensemen for the Wild, you can definitely be starting Jonas Brodin and Brock Faber, 2 guys that are playing on that top unit, even with Jared Spurgeon back, and are still playing top pair defensive minutes. So that's obviously really good to see the volume there for those guys. Brock Faber definitely has a little bit more of an offensive-minded brand of hockey than his counterpart Jonas Brodin in that sense. And then on Ottawa side, Stützle's been incredible. Brady Tkachuk, Drake Batherson, you can keep starting all of these guys as well. Tarasenko is now on the top line now that they're in Sweden, alongside Josh Norris and Brady Tkachuk. So they split up Norris and Drake Batherson. A little bit of surprise there, but Tarasenko, had a point in that first game in Sweden, and he is 66% rostered, a guy that I was considering dropping, where he was on the lineup playing with Rourke Chartier on that third line. But now up in that first line, I definitely give him a little bit more value in fantasy hockey. So just some callouts here for this game. I definitely be looking at the Wild money line. I think this is a good bounce back spot for them. A little change of scenery could help. Eriksson to score, the Swedish-born player. You got to bet on the Swedes when they're playing in their hometown. Just means a little bit more to them. And then Kaprizov shots on goal. I feel like that's a good bet here with the amount of shots that Ottawa's been allowing so far this season. But the next game on Saturday at 1 p.m. is between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Philadelphia Flyers. 2 solid defensive teams so far this year, but not so much recently. If you look at their last 5 games played, Vegas 19th in expected goals against, Philly 20th in expected goals against, and now this Vegas offense finally starting to find its way here. I know they got shut out against Washington, but Charlie Lindgren played a really good game. If you look at their last 5 games played, they're first in expected goals for. Obviously had 6 goals against the Montreal Canadiens, 5 goals against the San Jose Sharks when they shut them out as well. And then if you even look a little bit back further, they had scored 7 goals against the Colorado team, shut them out in that game too. I feel like their goaltending due for a little bit of regression here as well. But Philly, on the other sense, is still very good defensively, hasn't been as good in the offensive zone, not creating near as many chances as they were at the beginning of the season. Their last 5 games played, they're 29th in expected goals for right now. So just looking at the landscape for some players in this one, William Karlsson continues to just be an absolute rock star for this Vegas team on that third line, and he's helping his line mates as well get into that. But he was buzzing against the Montreal Canadiens. He had 9 shots on goal in that game. Didn't find the back of the net, did log an assist, but still has 19 points on the year, leads the team. right next to Jack Eichel in that sense. One guy I think is a sneaky start on Saturday afternoon is Pavel Dorofeyev. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Please correct me in the comments if I'm not. But he plays on this third line with William Karlsson. He's 0% rostered, so you don't go starting him instead of like a Tyler Seguin or something like that. But second on the team in expected goals for their last 5 games played. That's big reason because he's playing next to William Karlsson, who's creating so much offense. I think it's just kind of going on to the 2 other line mates on this team in Paul Cotter and Pavel Dorofeyev. He's playing on that third line right now, so I feel like even though it is their third line, they do roll these. Bruce Cassidy rolls these lines pretty consistently, and you're going to see this line on the ice a ton, especially with how well William Karlsson's been playing recently. Another guy I think you can continue to start was a must-add at the beginning of this week, and that's Ivan Barbashev playing on that top line with Jack Eichel and Marcia. So another line that played really well in that Montreal game. Eichel had a goal. He had 5 shots on goal. Marchessault also 4 shots on goal. So you see the volume there. Barbashev, I believe, had an assist in that game as well, with a goal also in a couple games before that. So I feel like Barbashev is continuing to be a guy that you can kind of lean on here. Shea Theodore coming off a 4-point performance against the Montreal Canadiens as well. And then on the Flyers side of things, Travis Sanheim continues to just be so fucking good for this Flyers team. Obviously a big breakout year for this guy, playing top pair minutes and pretty much the lead defenseman on this team right now. And then Owen Tippett started to find his way. Obviously everyone off to a slow start. Everyone was kind of really worried about him, but he has that goal scoring ability. 4 goals his last 5 games played. And I'm telling you guys right now, Tyson Forrester will start to get going at some point here. I think he's been playing really well on the line with Travis Konechny. 5th on the team in expected goals for this year, but has yet to log a single goal. I think we'll see something interesting happen here with Tyson Forrester. I feel like we'll see him go on like a pretty hot streak in terms of scoring goals, whether it be from now until the end of November, or maybe it'll be in the start of December. But I really like to see what's going on that line between Konechny and Forrester. Bobby Brink not in the lineup anymore right now with Couturier and Morgan Frost in there, so really no room for him in the top 6. And if he's not in the top 6, there's really no reason for him to be playing. He's a very offensive minded player. FanDuel call outs here, some bets I would like to place in this one. Golden Knights -1.5. I think we're going to see some big wins coming out of Vegas here, and by big margins. You saw that against Colorado. Golden Knights team total over as well, with how Philly has been playing recently, and defensively not as good as they were at the beginning of the year. Carter Hart just coming back from an injury and illness as well. Had a really good game against Carolina, but could be a letdown spot here. And then sprinkle goals for Tyson Forrester and Pavel Dorofeyev. I think they both have a chance of scoring here. Their odds will be really good. So at 1 p.m. Eastern on a Saturday, nice to sweat out those big goal scorer odds to really get your Saturday going. All right, next game here at 4 p.m. The Oilers taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning. What should have been at the beginning of the year 2 teams that would be at the top of the standings. Tampa Bay's been playing pretty well, has suffered some pretty bad losses recently, but just beat the Chicago Blackhawks 4-2. Lost to St. Louis 5-0 the game before that. Lost to Carolina 4-0 the game before that one. And then the Oilers obviously fired Jay Woodcroft. Now have their new coach in there, Chris Knobloch, and are 2-0 since he's coming to the lineup. Big comeback win against the Seattle Kraken on Wednesday night for this team. But 2 teams that have been trending down, but are starting to kind of trend up here. If you look at their last 5 games played, the Lightning 2-3, Oilers 3-2. Oilers 7th best Corsi for percentage in the NHL over that span. The Tampa Bay Lightning 6th. 2 teams that create a ton of offense. Both of these teams in the top 5 in expected goals for so far to start the year. Over the last 5 games played, excuse me. And then Tampa Bay as well, creating the 3rd most scoring chances per game over that same time frame. And the Oilers doing a good job in the high danger category, creating the 8th most high danger chances per game in their last 5. So looking at some starts and sits and some streamers, maybe Brendan Hagel and Nick Paul definitely continue to start these guys. I think Nick Paul will continue to get going here. I believe he was held pointless in that game against Chicago. Brandon Hagel scored an empty netter in that one, but I think we're going to start seeing these guys be a little bit more involved in the offense. Nick Paul on that second line with Steven Stamkos, another guy I think who is, he's about a point per game over the last 5 games, but he just hasn't been able to score. He leads the team in expected goals for the last 5 games played, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him score on here against a pretty weak Oilers defensive unit, and obviously a very weak goaltender in Stuart Skinner so far this year. And then the Oilers side of things, obviously Draisaitl and McDavid, those guys you leave in your lineup, but Zach Hyman and Evander Kane now playing on the second line with Leon Draisaitl, and Hyman playing on that first power play. I think these 2 guys are slam dunks. Obviously Zach Hyman, a guy 4 goals, 5 points his last 5 games played, and then Evander Kane had a hat trick against Seattle, 4 goals in his last 7 games played, or his last 5 games played, with 7 points in that same stretch. RNH now playing on the first line with McDavid. A lot of people were worried about him, but if he stays in that spot, you shouldn't be worried about him. McDavid, he'll continue to feed McDavid for goals and vice versa. Sam Gagner. Is Sam Gagner going to start to be fantasy valuable? He might be if he stays on that top line. 0 points since Chris Knobloch has started as the head coach for the Edmonton Oilers, now that he put Sam Gagner in that top line with McDavid and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, but I still think he's a guy you kind of want to keep your eye on. And if the Oilers have 4 games 1 week, definitely a guy you're going to want to stream considering he's playing alongside Connor McDavid. So 2 bets I like in this game, the over 6.5, and then Connor McDavid anytime goal. He has 10 goals in 10 games played against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Might as well keep that streak going.
NHL same game parlays are back on FanDuel this season. Offered in every single game, every single night. Unlike most books, you can include goals, points, and shots on goal. But the newest feature is the gift. Goal in the first 10 minutes. Looking at teams to target for the gift, here's the top 5 teams in goals per game last season. Here's a breakdown of goals in the first period from the 2021-22 season, as only 17% of games that season didn't have a goal in the first period. What will your NHL SGPs look like at FanDuel this season?
All right, so looking at the night slate now on Saturday, the Penguins and the Hurricanes. Pittsburgh losing their 6-game win streak against the Devils on Thursday night. A Devils team without Timo Meier, Jack Hughes, and Nico Hischier as well. They were due definitely for a little bit of regression. Tristan Jarry was the best goalie in the NHL since the start of November. He was 4-0 with a 1.38 goals against and like a 970 save percentage. Obviously, those numbers have come down since that New Jersey Devils game, but still a guy who's playing really well. I feel like they could go on a skid here with just like these. Obviously, Devils are a tough matchup. Now they play the Carolina Hurricanes, who I think are starting to come into their own here. I know they just lost recently against the Flyers, but this team rarely loses back-to-back games at home. Pens have also dropped 4 straight against the Carolina Hurricanes, so I like that even more. Carolina 3-2 their last 5, as I mentioned. They did disrupt their most recent game. It's against a really scrappy, pesky Philadelphia Flyers team. I don't think it's like a terrible loss by any means. Obviously outshot them, outchanced them in that one. Carter Hart played a really good game in that one there. So things we know about these two teams: Carolina very solid defensively, but they do the same thing on offense. Carolina 3rd best expected goals for over the last 5 games played. Both teams rank in the top 10 in expected goals for. Very good defensively. The goaltending edge, gonna have to give it to Pittsburgh right now, but I don't think that'll matter in this one. I like the Hurricanes to win this one against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And just looking at some players here, Sebastian Aho has finally started to turn it on. All fantasy hockey owners of Sebastian Aho can cease to worry at this point. 3 goals, 6 points his last 5 games played. Seth Jarvis, one guy I know a lot of people have asked me questions about. I wouldn't be too worried. He's still playing on that top line with Sebastian Aho and Teuvo Teravainen. Pointless his last 5 games played, but his expected goals for number still relatively high playing on that top line. 3 points in 6 career games against Pittsburgh, so does he get a point here? I like him to get a point in this one. Still getting a little bit involved on the power play as well. Marty Necas, it's almost time to start hitting the panic button on Marty Necas. 3 points his last 5 games played, including 2 goals, but over that same time frame, he's 10th in expected goals for. So really not dictating a ton of offensive pace for him. His shot attempts are obviously down, as you can tell there. Brady Shea, guy I'm going to continue to start here. 5 points his last 5 games played. Was really hot at the beginning of the season. Kind of like fell flat for a couple games, but now he's back up to producing for this defensive group. Dmitry Orlov, another guy who's starting to play a lot better on this Carolina team. One thing you'll notice with Carolina defensemen who are coming into this Rob Brindamore system at first, takes them a little bit while to get going, especially in terms of in terms of points production. Looking on the Pittsburgh side of things, Erik Karlsson's been awesome. Obviously a guy that's going to be highly rostered, but 8 points his last 5 games played. Thought that was important to point that out. Sidney Crosby as well. Hat-trick in that game against Columbus. 5 goals, 9 points his last 5 games played. This guy's turning back the clock, continues to do it at such a high level. 60 points, in 55 career games against the Carolina Hurricanes with 20 goals in that number as well. Lars Eller, I know it might sound crazy, might start to be a streamer candidate because he's creating a decent amount of offense. He has 4 points in his last 5 games played. He's playing on that 3rd line with Drew O'Connor and Radim Zohorna, but I still think that Lars Eller, with how much he's been producing at the 5-on-5 level, could potentially be a guy you're going to be looking to maybe pick up, especially in really deep leagues. I wouldn't pick him up for this game against Carolina. I don't think it's a great matchup, but maybe next week when they have a little bit more of an easier schedule, I think Lars Eller could be a pick here. So some bets I'm going to be making on this one at FanDuel: Hurricanes money line and Seth Jarvis to get it. All right, the last game we're going to be talking about on Saturday, 9 p.m. Eastern start for the Colorado Avalanche and the Dallas Stars. Battle of 2 of the top teams in the Central Division, 2 of the top teams in the Western Conference as well. Clear top teams in the Central now that Minnesota has obviously had a really rough start to the year, but both of these teams very solid defensively. I know you might not think that with you think of their first 2 top lines or their top players on this team. You're thinking of Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, Jason Robertson, Rupert Hintz, but they have so much depth at the defensive position. Josh Manson out right now for the Colorado Avalanche, but I don't don't even think that matters that much. Both of these teams rank in the top 5 in expected goals against over the last 5 games played. The one thing, Colorado's goaltending been very suspect. Georgiev has not been good recently. He started off really hot to start the year, but since they started this, they went on an Eastern Conference road trip. Since then, he has not been the same goaltender. I think we'll see a battle of goaltending though in this one, because Georgiev does have good numbers against the Stars. Something to fall back on for him to know, I've played good against this lineup before. I know I can do it again, even on the road at that point too. His last 4 games played against Dallas, he's 3-1. In all three of those wins, he had a goals against below 2 and a save percentage above 920. So those are good numbers to fall back on for Georgiev to maybe get back in his groove here. They're also both obviously very good offensive teams, top 6 in expected goals for, but both teams are averaging almost 5 goals per game over the last 5. I think that's a little high for how well these two teams play. And when these two teams play each other, it turns into a much more defensive battle. Under is 4-1 their last 5 meetings in Dallas as well. So just looking at some players in this one, Valeri Nichushkin, 4 goals his last 5 games played. Nathan MacKinnon only has 11 points in his last 5 games played, so don't worry about him. It's not like he's absolutely going off right now. 2 goals and 9 assists over that 5 game span. Bowen Byram and Sam Girard, I would love to start in this spot. I think Byram is a guy I'm going to continue to stream right now. I think he scored recently, and I think he'll continue to have a bigger part in this offense on that second unit with Sam Girard. And Sam Girard has a little bit more weight in fantasy hockey just because he plays on that second power play line where Byram doesn't get a ton of power play time in this Colorado offense just yet. On the Dallas side of things, Wyatt Johnson, the guy continues to be an absolute stud on that second line, and you can start to trust guys on the second and third line. I said Peter DeBoer was trying to figure out what was going on with these two lines after the first line, because obviously that first line solidified and continues to produce at a very high rate with Rupe Hintz, Jason Robertson, and Joe Pavelski. But now the second line and third line are starting to play much better. You could see it in Tyler Seguin, 6 points his last 5 games played. Even Duchesne, 4 goals his last 5 games played. Honestly, a potential sell high opportunity on Matt Duchesne. If you're looking to get rid of him, he's now 56% rostered, but with how many goals he has in his last 5 games played, I feel like this is definitely someone you can maybe try to move for a guy who's not playing as well right now. A guy that I'm going to be sitting right now, and it's just unfortunately to see because it's mainly because of injuries and how Jared Bednar has been needing to kind of work out this Colorado lineup recently, and it's Ryan Johansson. He's playing on the second line with Thomas Tatar and Jonathan Drouin, 2 guys I don't really love. Obviously, Jonathan Drouin started on that first line. At one point was a healthy scratch on this team. He came back. He scored recently, I believe 2 games ago, but I think he was playing on the line with Nathan MacKinnon. Very different feel when he's playing on the line with Thomas Tatar, who's old, and Ryan Johansson, who's also getting up there in age. One guy I'd honestly rather start if you need to start someone in this Colorado game is Ross Colton. He's been awesome. He leads the team in expected goals for over the last 5 games played and has 3 goals to show for it. Some callouts for this one, I'm going to be playing the under in this game, and then honestly I might sprinkle Ross Colton anytime goal scorer as well. Okay, so the first game on Sunday is between the Leafs and the Wild. This game, a puck drops at 8 a.m., so you better get your coffee and up early. Maybe sprinkle a little Baileys in there if you're really going to be enjoying a nice full Sunday of sports. But this is going to be a terrific game, I think, as well. The Minnesota Wild obviously playing the day before, so they get it back-to-back. I think they'll win the game on Saturday. Not so sure about this one. I think this is going to be a really tough-fought battle between these two teams, and I can honestly even seeing this game, the best bet being in this game is the over. I know I talked about Minnesota being able to limit chances, but the best thing the Toronto Maple Leafs has been able to do this year is be able to score goals on even some games, not a huge volume of shots. You saw it in their most recent game against Vancouver. They scored 5 goals on just 22 shots on net. Obviously got outplayed against a Vancouver team that's playing really well right now, but this is a completely different Minnesota Wild team. In terms of players for this one, you're going to continue to want to look at a lot of the Swedes, obviously. William Nylander, a guy I'll continue to start. Joel Eriksson on the Minnesota Wild side of things. Another guy I'm going to be looking to start, obviously. Matthew Nyes, if he's still on that first line with Marner and Matthews, you got to start him. For defensemen on the Leafs right now, really John Klingberg, a guy you need to drop. He's just such a liability defensively that I don't think Sheldon Keefe is going to give him enough time to play in those offensive situations. And Morgan Riley is now in that first power play unit as well. So Morgan Riley, probably the only defenseman I'm going to be trusting on this Toronto team right now and moving forward. And then on the Minnesota Wild things, we talked about the starts. It's going to be all the same guys there. Brock Faber, Jonas Brodin, Joel Eriksson, Kirill Kaprizov, and then Matt Zuccarello as well here. I think in this one, I'm going to be looking at the Leafs to win this game, money line or -1.5. And then taking the over in this game and William Nylander, anytime goal scorer. Hopefully he keeps the point streak going in the first game on Friday against Detroit and then continue and maybe even finish it to tie McDavid's record for the second only player or active NHL player right now to start the season with a 17-point streak. All right, so the last game we're going to be talking about, the Buffalo Sabres taking on the Chicago Blackhawks, Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern. The Buffalo Sabres have been struggling recently. Tage Thompson now going to miss some time, but I think there's some guys you can kind of rely on here in terms of fantasy hockey that I think will be good to kind of finish off your week. Definitely, Dylan Cousins now back in the lineup. If you watch my buy low, sell high, a guy that I'm definitely buying low on right now, coming back from injury, was still, even those first few games, still a little bit hurt, but it seems like he's starting to play a little bit better now. And with Tage Thompson out, he's going to have to fill this void as the top center on this team with Tage Thompson sidelined for the time being. JJ Peterka, another guy, he's playing on that first power play as well and has had a pretty good start to the year. It's kind of flatlined a little bit, but I think we'll see him get going again here soon. Obviously on defense, you're going to be starting Rasmus Dahlin, Owen Power on the Buffalo side of things. And Chicago, Taylor Hall was out in that game on Thursday against the Tampa Bay Lightning, but still, Connor Bedard and Philip Kurashev have obviously built this chemistry now. They're playing really well together. Nick Foligno's on that top line. I would still focus on those two guys in terms of fantasy hockey. Seth Jones starting to put some good performances together here as well. I wouldn't mind him as a spot start or as a streamer. In one of my leagues, I actually ended up dropping Seth Jones because I was like, it's better to just stream defensemen on a nightly basis instead of just relying on Seth Jones, because there are some games where Chicago will lose like 8-1. We've seen that happen to the Arizona Coyotes only like 2 weeks ago. So I feel like you don't want to continue to have these guys with -3 nights and just stream them in good positions. And I think this is a decent matchup for a guy like Seth Jones in this one. But I'm going to be looking at the Buffalo Sabres to take this game. So that will be my lone and only bet on Sunday for the Sabres Chicago game. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know what you thought of the weekend preview for week 6 of the fantasy hockey season. Hope you guys enjoy the games in Sweden. Be sure to download that FanDuel Canada app. They've got some really special markets for William Nylander's point streak and even the Global Series specials betting on Leafs players that are from Sweden. So be sure to check that out. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week for Must Add Week 7.